morning everyone. For this video, we are going to discuss about the emotional and the behavioral disorders. Um, what is emotional or behavioral disorders? EBD or the emotional and the behavioral disorders are specific mental health disorders that cause extreme difficulties with both emotions and behaviors. And also, these affect child's functioning in most or all areas of their life. And now let us tackle first about the factors that considered in determining if the child is emotionally disturbed. So, there are three factors: the intensity, the pattern, and the duration. So, when we say intensity, this refers to the severity of one's child. So, meaning, ari na to mahibaw-an kung unsa kagrabihon ang problema or ang emotion sa bata nga iyahang na-feel or ginabuhat. So, mao na siya. So, when we say pattern, so this refers to the time when the problem occurs. So, meaning kung nahitabo ba ni siya or nga problema, whether kung asa siya nahitabo or within sa school, sa home, or sa mga tingkatog ba siya nahitabo or sa tingkaon or unsa pa na diha. And lastly, we have the duration. So this refers to the length of time of the child's problem has been present. So, meaning, ari may bawaan kung kana nga mga bata is na ay EBD or emotional disturbance. Like, for example, na ay naobserbahan ang mga specialist about sa iyang emotions. Then, ilang hatagan og pila ka time or ka-days kung malapas gani sa ilahang gikuan nga exact time or days, meaning naa siya'y disturbance or EBD ang usa ka child. Like for example, case tantrums lasted for 45 minutes. So that's it. And now let us move on to maladaptive and the adaptive behavior. So when we say adaptive behavior, this refers to the behavior that enables a person to cope in their environment with greatest success and least conflict with others. So meaning, this is what we call as a positive behavior, in which we can be able to do such thing that is good for ourselves or for us. And also, adaptive behavior includes the ability to work, practice social skills, and take personal responsibility. So next is the maladaptive behavior. When we say maladaptive behavior, this refers to those that stops us from adapting to new or difficult circumstances. So, meaning this is the negative behavior in which this can stop us as individuals to do what is good for ourselves. And also, this is also viewed as negative behavior because it can cause harm to individuals. Now, I will discuss also the ideas definition of emotional and behavioral disorders. So, ideas definition stated that a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics a long period of time, or the chronicity and marked degree, the severity, which adversely affects the educational performance or the difficulty in school. Idea also includes that students with EBD must experience the following characteristics. So, first is the inability to learn. So, meaning, maka-experience jud ang mga bata nga naay EBD nga maglisod sila adjust sa ilahang learnings kung naa sila EBD. And also, second is inability to maintain or build satisfactory interpersonal relationship with peers or teachers. So, In here, pasabot maglisod sila, socialize sa ubang tao, or should I say, maglisod sila halubilo or makipaghalubilo sa ubang tao or makipag-connect sa mga tao, especially sa school. Maglisod sila, socialize ilang friends, ilang classmates, or the teachers. Next is the inappropriate types of behavior. So, meaning the experience of having the different types of behavior, which is para sa atuan niya, kita'y makakita, kita'y magtanaw silang behavior, dili na sa normal ang ilang behavior nga gipakita or gibuhat. Next is in a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. So, meaning maka-feel sad sila unhappiness. Especially kung naa sila'y gustong kuhaon or makuha, then dili dayon matuman. And that makes them unhappy. And that unhappiness leads them to depression. 5 is a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears. So, and now let us move on to the CCBD, or the Council for Children with Behavioral Disorders. CCBD's definition of EBD stated that behavioral or emotional response in school programs so different from appropriate age, culture, or ethnic norms that they adversely affects the educational performance. So there are also additional factors under CCBD definition of EBD. First is the rate. So this refers to the frequency of occurrence of behavior per standard unit of time. So meaning rate kay mao ni siya gigahin nga oras or time kung unsa kadugayon na hitabo or mahitabo ang kana nga mga behavior. So for example, Kay had 5 tantrums per week. So in here it shows the time and how it happens, or when or how. Next is the latency. So this refers to the time that elapses between the opportunity to respond and the beginning of the behavior. So meaning it takes time before mabuhat nila ilahang response. Kung sa atoa pa, kung sugoon ta sa atong mama, magdugay-dugay ta or dugay ta mo sabot. Diba? So, para sa ilaha, mas late ilang response. For example, kung sugon ka silang teacher, late ilang response. So, mabuhat nila after pa sa pila ka mga minutes. Something like that. And now, let us move on to the classification of emotional and the behavioral disorders. First is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder 4, or the DSM, is an elaborate clinical classification system consisting of 230 separate diagnostic categories or labels to identify the various types of disordered behaviors as observed by psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health personnel, and other clinicians. Next is the Quay Statistical Classification. So that's statistical analysis. Quay Statistical Classification. So that's statistical analysis of data revealed 4 clusters of traits and behaviors among children with EBD. First is the conduct disorder. So this characterized by disobedience, disruptive, getting into fights, and being bossy, and tempered tantrums. So, meaning, ari sa conduct disorders, kay sila mo mag-una sa mga away. Like, sila bitaw ang mangitag conflict, bisag wala ra, pero sila mangitag away, sila mag-una-una. Then, also, wala sa sila respeto sa ubang tao. Next is the anxiety withdrawal, sometimes called anxiety disorders. So, meaning, ari, as what I have said earlier, nga kung naagani tay EBD, na tendency nga maka-experience dito og mga different types of anxiety. Also depression, fear, guilt, and many more. Next is the immaturity. So this shows short attention span, extreme passivity, daydreaming, preference for younger playmates, and clumsiness. So, meaning, mag-act sila immature, bisag ilahang edad kay dili na bitaw bagay sa ilahang actions, like, they act like a kid lang gyapon. Pero, sa ilahang nga naa sila EBD, immature gyapon sila. Sometimes, like, for example, natay makabantay nga mga bata na mga immature, papansin kaayo sila, mga bata-bataan kay huna-huna, then, need sila og kanang pansinon sila. Next is socialized aggression. It's marked by truancy, gang membership, theft, and a feeling of pride and belonging to delinquent subculture. So, pasabot, ay ma-engage sad silang mga butang nga dili dapat unta para sa ilaha. Like, na sila yung mga barkada. Ilang mga barkada kay mga kiatsat. Then madugay, ilang barkada kay makabuhat ng mga crimes. Then maangin sila because na sila sa kanang circle of friends. Ma-engage sila mga butang as mas makapaharm pa sa ilahang kaugalingon. Next, number 3 is the direct observation and measurement. So there are 5 dimensions under DOM, or the first is the frequency, so indicates the rate of which the behavior occur and how often a particular behaviors are performed. Next is the topography, refers to the physical shape or form of behavior. So for example, Michelle screams, kick her heels in the floor, remove her clothes, and pulled her hair. Next is the duration, so a measure of the length and amount of time child exhibits the disordered behavior. Next is the magnitude, refers to the intensity of the displayed behavior. Stimulus control, so this refers to the inability to select an appropriate response to the stimulus. Then last is the degree of severity, so it indicates the EBD can be mild or severe. Ang kani di ay degree of severity mo ni siya ang mag-classify whether ang kana nga behavior kay mild ba siya or severe. So when we say mild, the children who respond positively to the therapy and intervention has a mild level of degree of EBD. Then they can attend regular class and work successfully, while for those children with severe condition of EBD, they require treatment and intervention. And for the etiological factors and causes of emotional and behavioral disorders, is to be discussed by Ms. Rename and Kahas.
So thank you, Ms. Kay Abaw. So now I will discuss the etiological factors and the causes of emotional and behavioral disorders. So there are 2 factors in etiologically or causes of emotional and behavioral disorder. First is the biological factors. Second is the environmental factor. So first, let's talk what is biological factors. Authorities believe that all children are born with a biologically determined temperament. The inborn temperament may not directly cause a behavior problem to occur, but may predispose the child to behavior disturbance. Certain events that easygoing children can handle may be problematic to other children with difficult temperament. So now, there are 2 types of environmental factors: the home and family influences and the school experiences. So first, let's talk about the home and the family influences. So it studies present pieces of evidence on the correlation between the parent-child interaction patterns and the development of positive and normal behavioral characteristics in a child. While the school experiences, there are experiences in school where children spend a large time of the day that can precipitate the occurrence of the behavior problems of the children. So when a child is not ready to handle a bullying inside the classroom, kanang he or she resorts to internalizing behavioral disorders and internalizing behavioral disorders. So first, let's tackle what is externalizing behavior behavioral disorders. So, it violates the rules and norms of society and annoy the disturbed to other people. Example, physical aggression, verbal bullying, relational aggression, theft, and also vandalism. While the internalizing behavioral disorders are actions that direct problematic energy toward the self. Example, being nervous or irritable, feeling afraid, lonely, and even sad. The causes of emotional and behavioral disorders are related to predisposing and precipitating factors. So now let's talk first the predisposing factors. It refers to the tendencies and risks to develop emotional disturbances. Example, physical illness or disabilities, shyness, hyperactive behavior that may come about as a result of heredity or emotional dysfunctional home environments, while the precipitating factors refers to the specific incidents that may trigger the display of emotional disturbances. Example, they kanang makasuway og death in the family, abandonment of the family, separation of parents, and other crisis situation. So next, let's talk about the characteristics of children and youth with emotional and behavioral disorders. First is the intelligence, intellectual characteristics, and academic achievement. Research on American children with emotional and behavioral disorders that use national samples reveal that these children have average IQ scores with a mean score of 86 points, with a more than a half of the sample scoring between 91 and 90 points by Valdez 1990. And the next one is the social skills and interpersonal relationship. Studies confirms that observation that students with emotional and behavioral disorders often experience great difficulty in developing and maintaining interpersonal relationship as early as during or early childhood. And the next one is antisocial behavior. These children manifest consistent and frequent disorders patterns of behavior that violate the rules and regulations at homes, the laws of the community and the country. They show their disdain of society and the norms by engaging in activities that go against others and properties. And the last one is oppositional defiant disorder, or also known as ODD. As the name implies, students or individuals with oppositional defiant disorders consistently go against or opposite, defy, and show hostility towards authority figures. The symptoms are often loses one's anger, often argues with adults, requests or rules, often actively defies or refuses to comply with adults' requests or rules, often deliberately annoys people, often blames others for one's mistake or misbehavior, often touchy or easily annoyed by others, often angry and resentful, and also often spiteful and vindictive. And that is the symptoms of ODD. And so now, let's tackle the aggressive and violent behaviors. It refers to acts that are abusive, that severely interfere with the activities to other people or objects, and even in the environment. While the next is delinquency. It is the word delinquency is a legal term that refers to the criminal offenses committed by an adolescent. The adolescent commit more serious offenses and continue to pattern of antisocial behavior until adulthood. Oftentimes, they are beyond the control of their parents, family, and friends. Example of delicate acts and crimes are lead to juvenile offenses. The first one is breaking in and destroying private property, attempted burglary, stealing, and shoplifting. The crime is robbery. And the second one is brutality, beating up a person until he or she is black and blue, burning a house or a person or shooting a person. And the crime is attempted homicide. And the third one is touching a private parts of a person, attempted rape, especially of the children, and the crime is rape. And the fourth one is early smoking and drinking, and also experimenting habitation and prohibited drugs. And the crime is committing crimes under the influence of liquor, drugs, dependency, and drug pushing. And the fourth one is, and the fifth one is carrying a knife, ice and an ice pick, and the crime is carrying deadly weapons. And the last one is disorderly conduct, and the crime is shooting incidents or murder.
So we will proceed to another part of our report, which is part of educational approaches. So first is we have in applied behavior analysis. It is the regular teachers and special education's teamwork collaboratively in developing an individualized educational plan or IEP. So next is we have the teaching social skills. So Nash, there are four parts of teaching social skills. First is we have the self-related behavior. It is an accepting consequences or ethical behavior, expressing feelings or positive attitude towards their self. Next is we have the task related behavior. It is attending behavior or following directions, performing before others quality of work. So next is we have the environmental behavior. So environmental behavior, it is a care of environment. They could be dealing or emerges or lunchroom behavior. Next is we have the interpersonal behavior. It is accepting authority, gaining attention, helping others, making conversation. Next is we have the alternative responses. So alternative responses, it is a strategy of training of for students with behavior problems to handle or diffuse provocative incidents. So next is we have the self-management skills. So it based on the research findings, it shows that the children with behavior problems have low concept and believe that they have a little control over their lives. Next is we're going to proceed to eight parts of educational approaches. So first we have the ecological intervention. So ecological intervention, it is an initial of the point of the counter of between child and the people or events in the environment or identified. So it is a cultural ecological intervention. So second is we have the positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement, it is an immediately applied when described of prefix behavior are manifested. So next is we have the negative reinforcement. So negative reinforcement, it is another part of extension of reinforcement for behavior that has been reinforced or withheld. So next is we have the extension. So extension, it is one of the useful reducing the number and intensity of duration of the undesirable of the students. So next is we have the rule setting. So rule setting, it is one of the very easy and effective to manage the behavior in the classroom. So it is also part of positive reinforcement is really applied. It is consequences if they are followed or they are violated. So next is we have the pacing the lesson and using a variety of activities. So here the teacher can model or the teacher can be desirous of having lots of activities like games, humor, proximity of control. Or here the teachers is going to have a desirable without verbal cues. So next is we have the cognitive and cognitive model. So the students records his or her own behavior or academics courses. So sometimes the teacher does the recording and they were going to compare the notes of the students or the ratings of the teacher. It is part of having a self-evaluation and it is help to students to understand what as undesirable behavior of the student. So next is we have the cognitive model. So cognitive model, it is another part of strategy. It is a learning prefix or suffixes to students' learning.
We will also discuss the 10 types of personality disorders. But before we will discuss each types, let us define first what is personality disorders. So a personality disorder is a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. And now, let us talk about the 10 types of behavior or the personal behavior. First, the antisocial personality disorders or the ASPD. So, people with ASPD show a lack of respect towards others and don't follow socially accepted norms or laws. So, ang antisocial di ay meaning kung na-ASPD ang usa ka bata, kay di na sila kay bang mo follow rules, especially sa school kanang ilang ikuan labag ang rules sa school, and also they do not know how to respect others. So there are also symptoms of SPDs. First is to act rashly. Kaya tawong ilang action kay wala na limit, ilang behavior kay dili na normal. Next is be irritable and aggressive. So they easily get irritated, dali ra sila masuko. Then fight or assault people. So wa sila labti, mangita jud sila bikil, mangita sila away bisag ulit saa. Next is the break the law. So as what I have said, ASPD kay mo na sila ang mo break sa mga rules nga gipang implement or mga gipang kuan na mga rules. So those are the symptoms of some of the symptoms of ASPD. Next is the anti-avoidant personality disorders. So people with AVPD have chronic feelings and are highly sensitive to being negatively judged by others. So people with AVPD kay kuani sila even they really wanted to socialize with other people, but ilahan na lang gidili because they are scared for judgment and criticism by the other people around them. So meaning they must prefer alone than to socialize others. So there are also symptoms of ABPD. So first is avoid working, school or social. So they avoid work because they're afraid of judgment from their co-workers, or in school afraid of judgments or criticism from their teachers and classmates. And also low self-esteem. People with AVPD kay low ilang confidence nga makipaghalubilo or mo face sad kadaghanan. So also self-isolation kay mas ganahan sila og sila ra kay mas comfortable ka sila ra. Then also worry about being ridiculed or shamed by others. So meaning mahadlok sila i-neglect sa ang mga tao nga mas ilahang maduulan or close, especially sa ilang family or friends. Next type is third type is the borderline personality disorders or the BPD. So it is a condition characterized by difficulties regulating your emotions. So kaning BPDDI kay mao ni siya ang type sa personality disorder in which we cannot control our emotions. So there are also symptoms of border disorders. So first is they have suicidal thoughts. So suicide. So kanang maghuna-una sila hikog or kanang mag-suicide bitaw kay tungod sa ilang mga nagkalain-lain na mga emotion nga dili naman nila madag control. So maybe those people died because of suicidal thoughts. They are under borderline personality disorder. Next is the self-harm. So they engage themselves to activities that can hurt them. Next is a feel empty and lonely all the time. So kanang mga tanaw na to sa ilaha laglum kay sila kuno na nag-inusar hilukto kay sila, then ilang mga kuan kay ilang mind kay out of nowhere. Next is the frequent and intense mood swings. So lain na mga mood. Then fear of abandonment. So those are some of the symptoms of ABPD. Next, and for the other types of personality disorder, is to be discussed by Miss Gisela Bali and Rename and Kahas.
I am going to discuss another part of personality disorders. So first is we have the dependent personality disorders. So it is a type of anxious personality disorders. People with PDP often feel like they're helpless, submissive, or incapable of taking care of themselves. They may have also trouble making simple decisions, but with the help of someone with dependent personality can learn of self-confidence and self-reliance. So next is we're going to proceed to the histrionic personality disorder. It is a mental condition marked by unstable emotions, or distorted self-image, and overwhelming. So it is desired to be noticed. So people with having HPD, they feel like they often behave dramatically or inappropriately to get attention. So next is we have the narcissistic personality disorder. So it is one of the several type of personality disorders or having a mental health condition in which people have inflated sense of their own depth, need to excessive attention and admiration for others. So people having DPD, it is the ability to unwillingness to recognize, and also they think that they are very better than the other one. So having NPD, it is they also need having an acknowledgement and admiration.
So thank you, Miss Giselle Aballe. So now I will tackle first the obsessive compulsive personality disorder, or OCPD. Is a personality disorder that characterized by the extreme perfectionism. Perfectionism to the point that it impairs the ability to finish tasks, order, a sense of righteousness about the things should be done, and also the neatness. People with OCPD will also feel a severe need to impose that their own standard on their outside environment. And the next one is the paranoid personality disorder, or also known as PPD. It is a mental health condition marked by a pattern or distrust and suspicion of others without an adequate reason to be suspicious. And also person with PPD, they have a difficulty of relaxing, quickly becoming angry or hostile, and having trouble working with others. And the next one is schizoid personality disorder, or also known as SCPD. It is an uncommon condition in which people avoid social activities and consistently shy away from interaction with others. They also have a limited range of emotional expression, and like they are prefer being alone and choose to do activities alone, and they seem humorless and indifferent or emotionally cold to others. And the last is the schizotypal personality disorder, or SPD. So it is a one of a group of condition informally called as eccentric. So eccentric means odd or unusual. People who have these disorders often seem be uncomfortable with intimacy or peculiar to others. And that's all to our report. We are hoping that you have learned something. Thank you for watching, and God bless.